The door clicked open, and a cold night breeze came in with a faint scent of unfamiliar perfume. From the pocket of his damp leather jacket, a receipt slipped out and fell to the floor. Room 301, Moonlight Motel. The moment I saw those words, my hands went cold. I had endured so much, but that night, something inside me broke. He was my second husband, but this time, I decided things would end differently. Not with tears, but with evidence. Let me tell you why I made that decision. You're listening to Silver Story Tree, where the voices of life's late chapters gently bloom again. Subscribe, like, and turn on the bell to hear more heartfelt stories that grow with time. The electronic lock on the front door clicked. I heard it clearly in the stillness of night, that unmistakable sound, breaking the silence of our home. It was 3:17 a.m. The leather jacket my husband wore carried a damp smell as he hung it on the rack. I pretended to be asleep, my breathing measured and calm, though my heart raced within my chest. Morning light hadn't yet broken through our curtains when I rose from bed. The sound of Taesu's heavy breathing filled our bedroom. As I slipped quietly into the hallway, I knew where to look. His jacket pockets had betrayed him before, and something told me they would again. My fingers trembled slightly as they dipped into the right pocket, feeling the crisp edge of paper. A receipt from Moonlight Motel. The receipt was still warm from his body. Room 301, check-in time 0217. On the back, scrawled in blue pen, were the initials S.J. My fingertips went cold despite the early summer warmth that had begun to seep through our apartment windows. The sound of water running in the bathroom startled me. I quickly slipped the receipt into my housecoat pocket. Taesu emerged, his face showing the fatigue he claimed came from working late. Traffic was terrible last night, he said, rubbing his eyes. A truck overturned on the highway. I couldn't get through until after midnight. I nodded, my face betraying nothing of what I knew. Would you like some breakfast? I need to prepare for the market anyway. The smell of fresh rice cakes wafted through Samgak Market. As I unlocked the metal shutters of my small food stall, the familiar rhythm of bus number 62 rumbling past on its morning route provided a soundtrack to my preparations. For 15 years, I had run this tteokbokki stall, serving spicy rice cakes to hungry customers. The routine usually calmed me, but not today. My hands worked automatically, chopping green onions and preparing the red pepper sauce. My mind, however, was elsewhere. Memories of my first husband, Myungsu, flashed before me. I remembered finding betting slips tucked between pages of books, receipts from loan sharks hidden in his work bag, the gambling that had consumed our savings, our apartment, and finally our marriage. I will not be taken advantage of again, I whispered to the simmering pot of anchovy broth. Records, Jungyeon. Keep records, Ran told me during our morning preparation. Her wrinkled hands skillfully kneaded dough next to my stall. At 66, she had seen more of life than I had. Don't just suspect. Document everything: dates, times, money. Without evidence, your tears mean nothing. My breathing became more measured as I absorbed her words. She was right. Suspicion without proof was just emotional torture. Evidence could be power. That evening, I placed the Moonlight Motel receipt in a small Ziploc bag, taking a photo with my smartphone. Before adding it to a folder labeled Household Expenses, I created a backup copy in my cloud storage account. My phone buzzed with a notification. It was Taesu in his car dealer group chat. Sorry for missing dinner. Phone battery died. Couldn't call. Another lie that didn't match his earlier story about traffic. I stared at the corner of the motel receipt, where those mysterious initials were written. S.J. The handwriting wasn't Taesu's. It was rounder, more feminine. Something cold settled in my stomach as I whispered the question. That would haunt me for weeks to come. Who are you, S.J.? The sound of oil bubbling at precisely 170 degrees filled my small food stall. I could tell the temperature by the sound alone. After 15 years of frying fish cakes and tempura, the rhythmic sizzle usually brought me comfort. A reminder of the small empire I had built from nothing. Today, it merely punctuated my troubled thoughts. The reduction of tteokbokki sauce created a steady tapping sound against the metal pot. Tap tap tap, like a clock counting down to something inevitable. I stirred mechanically, my mind replaying last night's discovery. The receipt. The initials. The lies. "Auntie, your tteokbokki looks extra delicious today," called a middle school student in uniform, her backpack heavy with books. I forced a smile, serving her a generous portion. My customers shouldn't suffer, because my marriage was crumbling beneath the weight of suspicion. Later that afternoon, I visited Sangdong Community Center to collect utility bills. The lady at the counter handed me a notice that made my heart skip. An automatic transfer account had been changed. Our joint household expenses account now had less money flowing into it. "When was this changed?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "About 3 weeks ago," the clerk replied. "Your husband made the request in person." 3 weeks. Without discussion. Without telling me. That evening, I reviewed our bank statements with new eyes. Night transactions appeared frequently, gas stations at odd hours, motel charges, wine bars I'd never heard of. A pattern emerged like a constellation of betrayal, connecting dots I had been too trusting to see. The next day, I stopped at the cafe near our apartment building. The owner, Sunmi, was arranging pastries in her display case. The bell above her door jingled as I entered, its cheerful sound at odds with my purpose. "Sunmi, I need to ask you something," I said, my voice lower than usual. "Have you noticed my husband coming home late recently?" Sunmi hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron. "I don't like to pry into my neighbors' lives, Mrs. Han." "Please," I said. "It's important." She sighed. "He's been coming in around 2 or 3 a.m. several times a week. My cafe security camera catches the building entrance. I notice because I'm often doing late inventory." I nodded, absorbing this confirmation of what I already suspected. When Taesu came home that evening, earlier than usual, his expression was contrite. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something," he said, sitting heavily at our kitchen table. "My mother's hospital bills have increased. The care facility needs more money." I studied his face. There was genuine concern. His mother's Parkinson's disease had advanced rapidly this year. But was that the whole story? "If you're struggling with money, we should have discussed it," I replied. "We're married. These decisions affect both of us." "I know," he said, looking down at his hands. "I just didn't want to burden you with more problems." As he spoke, I remembered our shared tablet, how it automatically backed up photos to our Google account. A potential source of information I hadn't yet explored. That night, after closing the market stall, I walked home through a light drizzle. The smell of rain-soaked pavement filled my nostrils as I clutched my umbrella. Inside our apartment, I pulled out a notebook and began methodically recording dates, times, and unexplained expenditures. "Turn suspicions into evidence," I whispered to myself, pressing the pen firmly against the paper. Just then, a notification appeared on my phone. 48 new photos synchronized from tablet. My heart raced as I wondered what secrets those images might contain. The mechanical ticking of our wall clock filled the apartment. As I sat alone at the kitchen table, 3:15 in the morning. Taesu hadn't returned yet. The sound marked time like a metronome, keeping rhythm with my racing thoughts and the plan forming in my mind. I installed an automatic call recording app on my phone. The electronic voice confirmed setup complete, its artificial cheerfulness jarring against my grim determination. I would need more than suspicions now. I needed proof that would stand up to scrutiny. Our shared tablet sat on the coffee table, its screen reflecting the dim kitchen light. I picked it up, my fingerprint unlocking it instantly. The photo gallery revealed more than I expected: screenshots from his car's dashboard, camera showing unfamiliar parking lots, timestamps that contradicted his stories about working late. I downloaded our credit card statements as Excel files, organizing them by date and location. Patterns emerged: late-night gas station visits, followed by motel charges, wine bar expenses on evenings he claimed to be working. The numbers told a story of deception, written in the cold language of transactions and receipts. The next morning, I visited Wonmi Police Station's Civil Affairs Office. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I approached the desk. "I'd like information about CCTV footage retention periods," I said to the officer, my voice steady despite my nerves. "Most businesses keep footage for about 30 days, he replied. "After that, it's usually overridden." "Do you need to file a report?" "Not yet," I answered. "Just gathering information." I scheduled an appointment with the Legal Aid Foundation. writing the date in my evidence notebook with precise strokes. The counselor on the phone assured me they could provide initial guidance free of charge. Back at the market, I sought out Sunmi at her cafe. The coffee machine hissed and gurgled as she prepared my usual order. "Could you make a note of when he comes and goes?" I asked quietly. "Just the time patterns, nothing else." Sunmi nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I can do that for you, Jungyeon." At home, I searched through Taesu's KakaoTalk friend list while he showered. There it was, Seoju SJ, with a profile picture showing only a coffee cup. My stomach tightened. The initials matched those on the motel receipt. When Taesu emerged from the bathroom, I kept my voice casual. "I'm thinking of making a deposit into your mother's hospital account on Friday. Can we check the balance together?" His momentary hesitation told me everything. "Sure, of course. Friday morning should work." After he left for work, I placed a small voice recorder in his jacket pocket. Nestled between the lining and outer fabric. The tiny red light blinked once, confirming it was recording. As I closed the closet door, a strange calm settled over me. "Tonight, I'll catch you," I whispered to the empty room. The sound of my own voice, firm and resolute, surprised me. It had been years since I'd heard such determination in it. The legal consultation room's air conditioner hummed softly, creating a soundtrack to my unfolding story. Attorney Lee Do-eun listened attentively as I laid out my evidence receipts in plastic bags, recorded conversations on my phone, bank statements highlighted in yellow. "We'll approach this methodically," he said, his voice carrying the steady confidence of experience. "First suspicions, then evidence, then family court mediation. That's our path forward." I nodded, the sound of my heartbeat loud in my ears. This was really happening. I was taking control after weeks of gathering evidence, of watching my marriage crumble under the weight of lies. "Make 3 backups of everything," Attorney Lee advised. "Phone, cloud storage, and USB drive. Evidence has a way of disappearing when people realize they're being caught." That afternoon, Sunmi handed me a small envelope. "I wrote down the times from my cafe's security camera," she whispered. "He entered the building at 2:11 a.m. and left at 3:07 a.m. on these dates." The paper inside contained a neatly organized timeline. That confirmed my worst suspicions. The hospital administration office was my next stop. The medicinal smell and squeaking shoes against linoleum. Flooring brought back memories of my first husband's gambling addiction treatment. Different hospital, same feeling of dread and determination. "I need to verify the payment arrangements for Nam Suying," I told the billing clerk. "I'm her daughter-in-law." The clerk's keyboard clicked rapidly. "It shows that her care is partially covered by national insurance, with the remaining amount divided between family members. Her son Nam Taesu pays 1/3, and her other children cover the rest." 1/3, not the crushing financial burden Taesu had described. Another lie exposed by simple fact-checking. Back at the market, Aran motioned me to join her for tea during our afternoon lull. The ceramic cups clinked gently as she poured. "I recognize that look," she said, her voice carrying decades of wisdom. "Your first husband had the same pattern. Lies always start with urgency, with 'I had no choice.' Remember that." I sipped the hot tea, letting her words sink in. "Did you ever regret leaving your husband?" I asked. Aran had raised 3 children alone. After divorcing her unfaithful spouse 30 years ago. "Not once," she replied firmly. "It was hard, yes. But lying to yourself is harder." The next day, I spoke with a social worker at the community center. Her brochures rustled as she handed them to me. "There are support systems for families with caregiving responsibilities," she explained. "Financial assistance, respite care options. There's no reason anyone would need to hide financial struggles. Rather than seeking help." Attorney Lee called that evening. "I've drafted the request for the motel's CCTV footage," he said. "And I've prepared documentation for your credit card records. We're building a solid case." That night, as I changed the light bulbs on my food stall's sign, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The rhythmic twist of each bulb, the small click as they locked into place, these simple actions grounded me in reality while my personal life seemed adrift. After closing the shop, I checked the voice recorder. Taesu's voice filled my ears. "Seoju, let's use room 305 tonight instead of 301. The digital file had automatically saved with location data the exact coordinates of Moonlight Motel. The family court mediation room was smaller than I had imagined. The wooden table seemed to shrink the space further, bringing me uncomfortably close to Taesu. The air conditioning hummed overhead, its constant drone providing white noise to an already tense atmosphere. Taesu shifted in his seat, his confident facade beginning to crack under the weight of evidence before him. "This is all a misunderstanding," he insisted, his voice less steady than usual. "An affair? You've misinterpreted everything." I remained silent as Attorney Lee laid out our evidence methodically. Credit card statements showed a pattern of late-night expenses. Call recordings captured conversations with Seoju planning their meetings. CCTV footage screenshots placed his car at the motel on nights he claimed to be working. Most damning were the photos automatically backed up from our tablet reflections in mirrors, capturing the back of a woman's head, just enough context to establish a pattern without clearly identifying her face. The motel receipts, Attorney Lee continued, match perfectly with the room numbers and times mentioned in the recorded conversations. The mediator, a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes, but a firm expression, reviewed the documents carefully. "This presents strong grounds for a reconsideration of property division ratios," she said, "and potentially justifies alimony claims." Taesu's shoulders slumped. The fight seemed to drain out of him as the evidence mounted. "My mother is sick," he said, his voice smaller now. I needed an escape. The pressure was too much." I looked at him directly for the first time that day. The man I had trusted with my heart and home. After the devastation of my first marriage. "I understand the circumstances," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "But the responsibility for your choices remains yours alone." The mediator closed her folder. "If we cannot reach an agreement today, this case will proceed to court." Taesu glanced at his own attorney, then back at me. The last of his bravado crumbled visibly. Let's try to settle this." As discussions continued about division of assets and support payments, Attorney Lee slipped me a small note. Seoju's resident registration number matches a secondary account holder on a joint account we discovered during asset investigation. The mechanical pencil in my hand made a soft clicking sound as I processed this information. Financial infidelity on top of emotional betrayal. The full picture was finally coming into focus. Each piece of evidence connecting to form an undeniable truth. The first clear morning after weeks of monsoon rain found me sitting on a bench in Bucheon Freedom Park. Birds chirped in the distance, their songs carrying on the gentle breeze. For the first time in months, I could breathe without that crushing weight on my chest. The rhythmic sound of rice cake pounders echoed from a nearby traditional food shop. Leaves glistened like fish scales in the morning light, still wet from yesterday's rain. The air felt lukewarm against my skin, neither hot nor cold, much like my emotions in that moment. Why was I always apologizing? I whispered to myself. The thought had haunted me through sleepless nights. How many times had I apologized for suspecting, for questioning, for not being understanding enough? The internal dialogue that had knotted my self-worth for years was finally beginning to unravel. Back at my food stall, a group of elementary school children gathered, their backpacks bouncing as they approached. "Your tteokbokki is the best, Auntie," one little girl exclaimed, her missing front tooth creating a whistle as she spoke. I found myself smiling, genuinely smiling for the first time in weeks. Aran stopped by during the afternoon lull, her warm hand covering mine. "Jungyeon, it's time to focus on your own ledger now," she said. "Your business, your future." I nodded, understanding her meaning beyond the literal words. That evening, I hung a new accounting ledger on the wall of my stall. 3 columns labeled clearly: income, expenses, documentation. No more haphazard receipts stuffed in pockets. No more trusting without verifying. I sent a text message to Attorney Lee. "Let's see this through to the end. I'll keep collecting evidence as needed." His response came quickly. "You're doing the right thing. Stay strong." At home, the sound of boiling broth in my pot created a comforting ambient noise. The apartment felt different now, quieter, but not with the tense silence of secrets. This was a peaceful quiet, the kind that comes with truth. My phone pinged with a banking notification. The first installment of our temporary settlement had been deposited. I took a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs completely before slowly releasing it. Later that evening, another message arrived, a notification that property registry documents were available for viewing. The search had revealed traces of a hidden rental deposit in Taesu's name. Another piece of evidence to strengthen my position. The property registry documents rustled as Attorney Lee spread them across his desk. Sunlight streamed through the office window, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. The sound of his finger tapping each key document created a percussion of progress. The rental deposit insurance records confirm what we suspected, he said. There's a clear trail showing assets were hidden during your marriage. I nodded, recalling the car's dashboard, camera footage and credit card Excel files I had meticulously organized weeks ago. Now they formed part of our evidence catalog, each item numbered and cross-referenced. We'll file for property disclosure and investigation, Attorney Lee continued. The court can require full financial transparency. The air conditioner hummed softly in the background as we discussed next steps. Each sound in the office papers shuffling, computer keys clicking, the occasional phone ring marked another step forward in reclaiming my financial security. Days later, Taesu's attorney contacted us. The mechanical voice of my phone announcing his call seemed fitting for the emotionless negotiation that followed. My client acknowledges certain financial arrangements weren't fully disclosed. He stated carefully, he's willing to agree to an increased property division ratio in your favor. The alimony amount would be determined within court guidelines, but the evidence we'd gathered pushed the scales toward the higher end of the spectrum. The metallic taste of victory was tempered by sadness for what had been lost. But I remained focused on the practical outcomes. We crafted a settlement that combined court judgment with mutual agreement, securing my store's business rights and protecting my rental deposit with legal safeguards. The sound of pages turning as we reviewed the documents reminded me of how far I had come from that first discovered motel receipt. Some credit card debt would become Taesu's sole responsibility, separating our financial futures as clearly as our personal ones. The printer hummed as it produced copies of our agreement, the sound oddly satisfying as each page represented another piece of my life reclaimed. We're approaching the final stages of the divorce proceedings, Attorney Lee explained. You've chosen to keep your current surname? Yes, I confirmed. I've been Han Jung-yeon for 62 years. That won't change now. Back at the market, Aran helped me install a new cash receipt machine in my stall. The device beeped as we tested it, a small sound signaling a new beginning. Every transaction would now be recorded properly. Every aspect of my business transparent and organized. This machine makes everything clearer, Aran observed, her wise eyes crinkling at the corners. Just like you've made your life clearer. That evening, my phone chimed with a message from Attorney Lee, final documents ready. We'll sign tonight. The evening sunlight bathed my food stall's glass door in golden light. I wiped down the counter one last time, the familiar motion. A comfort after a day of serving customers. The market's closing announcements echoed through the corridors, signaling the end of another day. My phone vibrated with a notification from Attorney Lee. Documents signed and filed. It's official. 6 words that closed one chapter of my life and opened another. The sound of my stamp pressing against paper had been surprisingly definitive this morning. Thump. My hand hadn't trembled as I expected it might. Instead, I felt a steadiness I hadn't known in years. A cool breeze swept through Samgak Market's alleyways, carrying with it the mixed aromas of the day's commerce: ginger, fish, fresh produce, and the sweet scent of success that now seemed to follow me. Instead of the usual oil smell that clung to my clothes, I noticed the rich aroma of freshly fried Jim Mari rolls and the laughter of children at a neighboring toy shop. These sounds and scents had always been there, but somehow I was noticing them anew. I had turned off the automatic backup feature on our shared tablet. Now my records would be kept on my terms, organized with the precision that had ultimately protected me. Sunmi brought a small bouquet of flowers to my stall as I was closing. The cellophane crinkled as she handed it to me. You did it, Ani. You've been so strong through all of this. Aran patted my shoulder as she passed by, her touch firm and reassuring. Just focus on your business now. Never let anyone get the better of you again. The next morning, the sound of my metal shutters rolling up greeted the dawn. My stall sign glowed brightly in the early light, the new bulbs I had installed casting a warm welcome to early market visitors. I felt something thawing inside me, a long winter of doubt and pain finally yielding to spring's promise. The weight of betrayal hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something else: wisdom, strength, and a fierce determination to protect what was mine. As I prepared the first batch of rice cake dough for the day, I thought about the evidence folder still stored safely in my cloud account. I wouldn't delete it, not yet. It stood as a reminder of lessons hard won and boundaries firmly established. I'm finally living as myself now, I whispered to the simmering pot. For once, the only response I needed was the sound of my own confident voice, echoing in a space that was truly mine. Everyone, I'm sure some of you have also been hurt by someone you trusted deeply. I once felt hopeless too, but in the end, it wasn't my tears that saved me, it was courage. When I started recording and proving the truth, I finally reclaimed what was mine and felt free again. It's never too late, we can start over at any time in life. Please share your own experiences and thoughts in the comments. Your likes and subscriptions give strength to stories like mine. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it with them. Stay healthy and take good care of your heart today.